Well, on the polls, Queenslanders, as we know, go to the polls this weekend. It's been a rough and tumble campaign, in my view. And in typically Queensland end to the contest, Premier Stephen Miles ended up hooning around today on a jet ski in his budgie smugglers. And if the polls are to be believed, there has been a last-minute collapse in support for LNP leader David Crisafulli. Now, it might be blamed in part on his small target campaigning strategy, ironically, something predicted by Friday night regular Campbell Newman weeks ago. Queensland could be headed for minority government, which would be a disaster for everyone. Campbell Newman will front Sky's election coverage tomorrow night, along with Anastasia Palaszczuk. Can't wait to watch it. Campbell, great to be with you again. You tipped it. You said he should not make himself a small target.
I'm afraid it is coming to pass in exactly the way that we've talked about previously, Steve. And this concerned me for a long time. And you know, it's like this: nature abhors a vacuum. If you don't fill that vacuum in politics, the media will write the narrative themselves. I do think that, and I was just telling some people in the Courier Mail, some journalists, that I think the media has been unfair in this campaign. They've put a lot of pressure and a blowtorch, the spotlight on Crisafulli. That's fair enough, but they haven't on a government that has essentially been in charge here for 30 of the last 35 years. So if Queensland today is not the way that the viewers who might be watching from Queensland this evening want, well, it's the Labor Party's health system. It's the Labor Party's cost of living crisis. It's the Labor Party's crime crisis. And that hasn't come through loud and clear. So I'm afraid it is coming to pass. And in terms of the numbers, they don't lie. In 5 weeks, try this, Steve, in 5 weeks, the polling shows that Miles has gone from a net favourability of -10 to -3. So he's on the up. In contrast, Crisafulli's gone from +12 to -3, which is not really where you want to be at this stage of a very important election campaign.
You can't ignore those numbers, you're quite right. You'll love this piece of analysis. I think I read it in the Financial Review today, which made the argument that Crisafulli and the people around him have deliberately designed this small target strategy because, quote, they don't want him to do a Campbell Newman and get in there and make all of these big changes and then be a one-term government. What do you say to that?
Well, look, you know, I continue to be blown away by the fact that the LNP don't understand what actually happened in 2015 and why we lost that election. They've taken all the wrong lessons. And I can tell you now, we didn't lose because we had a big majority. We lost for a range of reasons. I'm happy to explore that in more detail when I've got lots of time tomorrow night. But you know, that is just a preposterous sort of thesis. And you don't go into an election campaign looking to sort of pull your punches or fall short. It's like running the 100 metres dash and looking over your shoulder. You've got to run for that line. You've got to be aggressive. You've got to be positive. You've got to have an agenda. You've got to have a vision, and you've got to make every single day count. And it's not about sort of thinking, oh, well, I don't want to quite win big. That's just rubbish. And they will need the buffer. Look, if they want to be an effective government, they need to make tough decisions because Queensland demands it right now, and they will need an electoral buffer. But again, tomorrow night, if people tune in, I'm sure there'll be lots more to say about the lessons that they failed to learn.
We'll be tuning in, don't you worry about that. I've got dinner organised. I'll be sitting watching every minute of it. How much did the insertion of the abortion argument damage Crisafulli, do you believe?
Look, last week on this program with you, I think I got it wrong. I was sort of at the time essentially saying I didn't think it was having as big an impact as I think it actually has. So I want to correct that tonight. And here's why it made an impact. It's not the issue of abortion itself. Yes, for the women who are watching this evening who have strong views either way, it's important to them. But what made it worse, Steve, was the prevarication, the obfuscation. And what we finally got in the third debate was a clear answer from Crisafulli. Whether you agree or not, he said, I support a woman's right to choose. He said, yes, he had a one-word response, but that was late in the debate. Now, if he'd said that 2 weeks ago, we wouldn't have had night after night these questions from journalists and being played out to everyone at home, where the blokes were watching going, can this guy make a call on something? That's what's been damaging. And that's on top of other answers on other sort of important issues, you know, for example, election costings or the like. And I don't think that's helped one little bit. So now there's a lesson.
Yeah, you've
got to be able to answer. You've got to be able to answer straight. Yeah.
The problem was he had to be dragged kicking and screaming, even for that answer in the third debate, which was just such a bad look. Hey, did you ever go campaigning on a jet ski?
Well, Steve, not on a jet ski, but I looked with envy when I saw those images. No, look, I've done a lot of, I confess, I've tried to follow the great Peter Beattie, the master of stunts and spin. I've swum in the dry dock, which wasn't dry, on the edge of the Brisbane River. I've dressed up in high vis and filled potholes. I've cut grass for the cameras to demonstrate a council that wasn't working hard enough. I stand accused and I confess my sins. I have been there. I have done what Stephen Miles has done. So good on him. I hope he hasn't alarmed the folks at home when that's on TV tonight.
You're quite right. Beattie was the best at it. No one can top him. I mean, how bad, seriously, for Queensland would a minority government be either way?
Well, look, they're saying no deals, which, come on, it's implausible, it's baloney. I think a deal with the Greens for a minority Labor government would be diabolical. I agree with that. But you know what? If the LNP had to do a deal with the KAP, I don't agree with David that they're the, what was his term? I'm just checking my notes, the chaotic catters. I think that's a bit glib. Yeah, I think Robbie Katter's a fundamentally decent human being. And, you know, he's representing the interests of people in the north. And I think he does that effectively. They've got issues that they want dealt with. And I don't think it would be a bad thing if Crisafulli had to come to an accommodation with them to form government. I mean, I think the Catters made a big mistake back in 2015 to back Anastasia Palaszczuk. Of course, I think that perhaps they've learnt from that. And this time round, they will support the LNP.
Just finally, I mean, it seems in every election now, whether it's state or federal, we get a lot of people voting early. The tip is more than 800,000 Queenslanders already cast their vote. Who does that favour? Does that favour the LNP or does it favour the incumbent?
Look, I actually think it favours the LNP, Steve, and that's why I was wary of an exit poll that was published in the Courier Mail some time back in the campaign when the pre-poll was really getting into its stride, because I do think it favours the self-employed, retirees. Perhaps it's tempered by university students and the like, but I think it tends more to be the way of the LNP. And I did check some numbers for the seat of Clayfield, where we in the Libertarian Party have got Nick Buick standing, and I did see that the pre-poll last time, it seemed to me, favoured the LNP incumbent more than Labor. So that's my take on it.
Good luck tomorrow night. I'll make sure I'm tuned in, and have a great broadcast, you and Anastasia and the rest of the crew.
Thanks, Steve.
Thank you, Campbell. Campbell Newman will be back with us next Friday night, and he'll join Anastasia Palaszczuk, Kieran Gilbert, Andrew Clennell and Peter Credlin, among many others, as part of the Sky News Queensland Decides coverage from 5 o'clock tomorrow night, Queensland time. If you're watching us up north, at 6 o'clock daylight savings time, you can stream live at skynews.com.au, or you can, of course, watch via Sky News on Foxtel and Sky News Region.